In 1836, the Eastern Counties Railway was formed in order to provide a railway service from London to York via Cambridge. A conclusion that London to Norwich would be more feasible led to an Act being passed on the 4th of July 1836, with construction commencing March 1837. However, a number of windmills were on the route, and navigating Bow Marshes meant brick viaducts, which increased the cost, so the railway terminated at Colchester in 1843. With the collapse of other railways who had built the remainder of the original intended route, the Eastern Counties were able to take them over, and by 1854 were the largest of the East Anglian railway companies. Most of the railways survived after Beeching, as much of this territory was, and still is, commuter belt. Goods were mostly agricultural, but also included fresh fish, spirits and ale. Whilst the railways in Essex were first constructed to improve the towns with London money, the primary concern was passengers and a route to the north. The Eastern Counties operated the first steam-driven excavating machine in 1843 at Brentwood, the first two-wheel pony truck in 1859, a self-propelled steam coach which reached Norwich from London in a respectable 3 hours and 35 minutes. On the downside, the railway adopted 5-foot gauge and converted to standard in 1844. The Eastern Counties also operated the Woolwich Ferry. After internal wrangling, shareholders and directors lost faith in each other, and an Act of Parliament created the Great Eastern Railway, which took over the Eastern Counties and a number of other small railways. Great Eastern built Liverpool Street, and following a number of seaside resorts being reached by the railway, the Great Eastern became the busiest steam-hauled commuter system in the world. It held a monopoly in East Anglia until the building of the Midland and the Great Northern in 1892. In 1902, the Northern and Eastern Railway, which ran to Bishop Stortford and had been leased to the Eastern Counties for a 999-year lease, was finally absorbed into the Great Eastern. The Great Eastern survived until the 1923 grouping, when it became part of the London North Eastern Railway. On the 23rd of June 1839, the railway connected Romford from Devonshire Street. The station was a short walk from the current Bethnal Green Overground station. On the 1st of July 1840, the line extended to Brentwood, and the London terminus was moved to Shoreditch, very close to Brick Lane Market. In September, the Northern and Eastern Railway connected Stratford to Broxbourne. The Northern and Eastern had planned to reach York, but found themselves forever short of money, relying on the Eastern Counties for access into London. In August 1841, the line reached a temporary station of Spellbrook outside Harlow, and in May 1842 it reached Bishop Stortford. In March of 1843, the Eastern Counties extended to Colchester. In October, the Northern and Eastern got to Hertford. It would be the last of their builds, as just 3 months later they leased their line to the Eastern Counties for a 999-year lease, which was eventually absorbed. In October, both lines were converted to standard gauge from 5 feet. In 1845, the Eastern Counties provided Cambridge's first station. Their failure to reach Norwich as promised prompted the formation of the Eastern Union Railway in 1846, who built their own line from Colchester to Bury St Edmunds via Ipswich, intending to reach Norwich, but the Eastern Counties arrived first via Cambridge and Ely. The Eastern Union was financed partly by Norwich's Mayor Sir Samuel Bignold. The Eastern Counties meanwhile opened a station at Cheshunt on a new line via Bethnal Green and Tottenham on the other side of the River Lee. George Hudson was now the chairman of the Eastern Counties, invited by the board to help improve the railway. In 1847, the Eastern Union created branches to Hadley and Hythe Quay, which had been built by the Colchester, Stour Valley, Sudbury and Halstead Railway. 1848 saw the opening of Malden, Witham and Braintree Railway, crossing at Witham, with intermediate stations at Langford, Wickham and Bulford. It was bought out by the Eastern Counties before construction started. In 1849, the Eastern Counties created the Enfield Town branch, shortly after Hudson's fraud had been discovered, and he promptly resigned rather than attend a shareholders' meeting. In Shoeburyness, a military establishment was created on the coast. In July, Sudbury and Marks Tey were connected as the Stour Valley Railway, which would be extended in 1865. The section from Bow to Stratford gained a third line in 1854, and the London, Tilbury and Southend Railway was formed, laying metals as far as Thurrock. The Eastern Union, in financial difficulty, were rescued by absorption into the eastern counties, who took control of the Mayflower line to Harwich, which opened in August. The London and Tilbury continued towards Southend, reaching Leigh on the 1st of July 1855. Thames Haven connected to the unopened London and Tilbury extension. It was intended to be a cattle and fish port, but took passengers from the outset, quickly becoming freight only. It had a frittered history. The London Tilbury reached Southend in March 1856. In August, the eastern counties penetrated Epping Forest with a station at Loughton. This section of the now Central Line precedes the Metropolitan Railway and the first beginnings of the Tube by 7 years. 1858 saw a spur from Hertford eastern counties to the Great Northern at the other Hertford station. The former was moved west in 1888. In 1861, the Colne Valley and Howstead Railway opened a branch from Chapel to Castle Hedingham, extending to Yeldham in 1862 and Haverhill in 1863. The eastern counties extended to Buntingford in July from a junction at Amwell. The eastern counties was absorbed with many other railways by the Great Eastern in August. Haverhill became a junction station in 1865 as the Stour Valley was extended from Sudbury to Shelford, just outside Cambridge. The Gibsons, a family of bankers, opened an independent branch to Saffron Walden in 1865. The Great Eastern took over in 77. Also in 1865, the Loughton branch was extended to Ongar. Many railways built single track until they became profitable and then doubled up. The Epping to Ongar section was never doubled and was underused throughout its life. The Gibsons extended to Bartlow in 1866. A branch heading to Frinton completed as far as Kirby Cross in March, including a spur to the south of Colchester at St Botolph's. This had been built by the Tendring Hundred Railway, who had also built the Wivenhoe to Brightlingsea Railway. Both railways were eventually absorbed into the Great Eastern. In 1863, a railway was authorised by Parliament to start in Missley and end in Frinton with a branch to Thorpe-le-Soken. Despite a ceremonious sod cutting in 1867, the railway was never built. Competition from the Tendring Hundred and a battle over pay from their contractors led to failure, though some earthworks can still be seen. Frinton was reached by the Tendring Hundred in 1867. In 1869, the original Braintree station became a goods depot when a line was built from Stortford to Braintree via Dunmow and Takeley, connecting to Witham. In 1875, the London terminus moved to Liverpool Street. Tracks from Bow to Stratford were quadrupled and Bishopsgate became a goods yard. The Felixstowe Railway and Pier Company built a railway from north of Ipswich in 1877. Prominent local landowner Colonel George Tomline renamed them the Felixstowe Dock and Railway Company. The line was quickly transferred to the Great Eastern. Despite not reaching Essex, the Great Eastern built a branch from Hackney to Chingford in 1878, crossing the Cheshunt line at Walthamstow. From Kirby Cross, the Great Eastern extended to Clacton in 1882. The Harwich route was altered to a new port terminal in 1883. In 1884, the London, Tilbury and Southend extended to Shoeburyness, and from Barking to Upminster in 1885. Pigs Bay Railway, part of the Royal Artillery Gunnery School, was constructed in 1887. The railway has not been used for some time, but was previously an MOD testing facility for the impact of terrorism on the National Railway. The Felixstowe Railway transferred to the Great Eastern in 1885. Woodham Ferrers received their station with an extension from Malden. It was some miles from Woodham Ferrers, and thus South Woodham Ferrers was built round the railway. In 1888, the London and Tilbury extended to Pitsea from Upminster. Southend received their second station in 1889. As was common at the time, station nomenclature was confusing, so each railway confounded the other. This station, north of the Tilbury one, was named Southend-on-Sea. It would become Victoria. The Great Eastern built a line from Wickford passing Woodham Ferrers and on to Southminster. In 1890, Southend's new Iron Pier has a railway included to complete the 2-kilometre journey and a motor car supplied by Falcon Works of Loughborough, which opened on the 2nd of August. It was electrically operated. The London and Tilbury created a new branch connecting existing lines via Upminster and Grays via Ockenden in 1892. Another connecting branch was provided from Romford to Upminster in 1893. The same year saw the Wivenhoe and Brightlingsea transfer to the Great Eastern. There has been much speculation about Ongar over the years, and that it was originally intended to extend to Chelmsford. This is not true. It was always to be the terminus, but E. F. Carter speculates the line was authorised to Dunmow. However, following the Light Railways Act of 1896, where the big railway companies were encouraged to construct and run small railways, a light railway was put forward in 1897 running from Ongar through the Rodings and Dunmow to Yeldon. The proposal was made by Holman Fred Stevens, a light railway civil engineer, and although he successfully delivered 17 light railways, including Festiniog, the Central Essex Light Railway was a failure. Felixstowe gained its first station in 1898. In 1901, the Corringham Light Railway, which served the Kinnock Explosives Works, as well as a small town for employees giving them access to London and Tilbury, opened. The Fairlop Loop was created in 1903 by the Great Eastern, running from Woodford through Roding Valley and Hainault and turning south to the Ilford Main Line. Another light railway was proposed and opened from Kelvedon to Tollesbury in 1904, passing Tiptree, home of Wilkins Jam, who was part of the driving force in getting the line built, giving access to the main line and eventually to the sea via the River Blackwater. Goods were coal and manure received and agriculture dispatched. Such was the initial success, the line was extended to Tollesbury Pier in 1907. A further light railway was authorised from Elsenham to Thaxted. All the stations were some distance from their respective towns, and Thaxted required a bridge over the River Chelmer, which was not feasible. This led to its early demise. Opened in 1913, it was the last railway to be built in Essex before the connection to Stansted Airport. In 1916, a connection was made to the Royal Small Arms Factory in Enfield, the makers of Enfield rifles and Bren light machine guns. The area is known today as Gunpowder Mills. The Tollesbury Pier extension was removed in 1921 from the Kelvedon and Tollesbury Light Railway. The Hertford spur to the Great Northern was disconnected in 1924. In 1932, Hadley Station closed to passengers, becoming goods only. Malden to Woodham Ferrers closed in 1939. Built in 1935 under the New Works programme, the tunnel between Newbury Park and Leytonstone Station came into use in 1947. It was used as an armaments factory during the war. The connection to Ilford was severed. Following the nationalisation of the railways and the formation of British Rail in 1948, the line from Stratford to Loughton was brought under the ownership of the London Passenger Transport Board and became part of the Underground network. The rest of the line followed in 1949, though the section from Epping to Wonga remained under steam until 1957, and there were occasional steam trains from Liverpool Street to allow the locomotives to be maintained. In 1949, the two Southend stations got their distinctive names, Central and Victoria. In the 1950s, Stanway Depot opened just south of Colchester. In 1951, the Kelvedon Light Railway cut back to Tiptree only. The Corringham Light Railway stopped a passenger service in 1952 and was absorbed into the Vacuum Oil Company until the 1970s. The Elsenham and Thaxted Light Railway closed in 1953. The Thames Haven line was removed from passenger service, albeit workmen's trains. The connection remains in place but serves Shell Oil Depot only. In 1962, the remaining branch of the Kelvedon Light Railway was removed. The siding to the Small Arms Factory was dismantled in 1963. Saffron Walden branch was closed down in 1964, as was the Brightlingsea branch, which was Beeching's first Essex fatality, and Braintree goods station. The Hadley branch closed in 1965, as did the whole of the Colne Valley Railway and the Bunt line to Buntingford, which ran through Haddam and Braffing. 1966 saw the closure of the Malden to Witham branch. This was the last of Beeching's Essex victims. Suffolk's Bartlow to Sudbury line closed in 1967. At Felixstowe in 1970, British Rail reorganised the railway to serve initially a new dock to the south and the removal of the southbound line from the station. The last train ran on the Stortford to Braintree line in 1972, though all services had slowly come to a halt with passengers in 1952, excursions in 1964 and all traffic from 66. However, the viaduct at Dunmow was what caused greatest concern and two services were run from either end, the east for sugar beet and the west for Geest banana freight. As no one was prepared to pay the $120,000 to repair the bridge, the line was finally closed in February 1972 when all banana freight had been transferred to the road. The Hythe Quay branch outside Colchester was closed in 1973. 1 mile of track at Castle Hedingham with a signal box and railway yard was obtained in 1973 and opened in 1974 as the Colne Valley Railway. The railway faced uncertainty in 2015 when Christopher Young, an Australian businessman and current director of the railway, had applied for planning permission to build 600 homes on the site. In 2016, the site was saved by a lottery grant and assistance from Braintree District Council. In the mid-80s, Stanway Depot closed. In 1986, near Southminster, the quirky Mangaps Railway opened. It had never been on the railway network, but 3/4 of a mile, 1.2 kilometres, of standard gauge track was laid by the Jolly family and continues to run as a volunteer-led museum. Foster Associates designed a new building and construction took place between 1988 and 1991, opening Stansted as London's third terminal. The airport had been in existence since 1943. As part of the new opening, a railway from the West Anglia main line to the airport was constructed, as was the unusual Airside Railway, a totally automatic people mover system with one line and 3 stations. It runs on double-track guideway for 3.2 kilometres, 2 miles, with Adtrans rolling stock. In 2023, Stansted was granted permission to expand, and the railway is in the way and will be decommissioned in 2026. The Epping-Ongar Railway, part of London Underground, was closed on the 30th of September 1994, the same day as Aldwych and its branch. The railway was collecting £38 a week in fares, and although the service had been cut back, very few people were using the railway, opting to drive to Epping or Shenfield instead. The line was purchased by a private concern, which ran steam trains from 2004. Southend Airport opened in 1935 and during the 1960s was the UK's third busiest airport, behind Heathrow and Manchester. The airport was upgraded and reopened as London's Southend Airport in 2012 as an Olympic deliverable. In 2013, Network Rail remodelled Felixstowe docks. The Stansted Airport Transit System is proposed to close in 2026. It carries 11.5 million passengers annually on Third Rail electrified central track. It is a guided busway on carriages with tired wheels. Thank you for watching this video of my home county. What are your memories of these railways? Did you ever travel to Hadley, Thaxted or Tollesbury? Or perhaps you worked these lines? I always love reading your comments.